Hello, in this video I want to talk about the general hints and tips in both attacking and defending a keep and some strategies that you can employ when doing so. I will focus on each separately, but I will start by focusing on attacking because there is generally less overall strategies in attacking a keep than there is in defending a keep. When attacking a keep, you can either choose to attack the door or a wall. The general idea is that the door is easier to take down and quicker to take down, especially if you are using a ram. However, you are more vulnerable when attacking the door because you can be hit by oils from this position above here. You can also be hit by oils through this small grate in between, but some defenders won't know about that. So if you are attacking a lightly defended keep or a keep that you need to take quickly or else it will be heavily reinforced, you would generally go for the door. Alternatively, you can attack a wall such as this, which is generally slower to take down because you cannot use rams and they generally have higher health. However, can be more effective in that you can attack a wall that is less likely to be spotted by the enemy and therefore likely be able to get the keep under siege without being detected. You would therefore generally use this if you were going behind enemy lines or in some sort of situation where you feel like you've got a little bit more time before reinforcements will get there, and being able to get it under siege without being detected is your priority. One thing to be aware of when attacking walls with doors in is to not shoot the door itself. If you shoot the door itself like this, then you will not actually do any damage. You need to make sure you hit the walls around it. You can also hit the stairs in front to be able to actually damage the wall. There is also a third strategy which I don't see as often but is occasionally used, which is to do a 50-50 attack, which is to attack both the outer wall and the inner postern wall at the same time. You could only hit the inner wall with trebuchets, and you could only do so if the trebuchets were lined up right against the wall. For example, I would set up a trebuchet here and shoot over this wall to hit the wall behind. If you time this correctly, you can make it so that both walls hit 50% at roughly the same time, and therefore you minimise the amount of time between the keep going under siege and therefore your attack being detected and being able to attack the inner keep. Therefore this is useful if you do not worry about being detected whilst the keep is out of siege, but worry that you'll get heavy reinforcements as soon as the keep goes under siege. When attacking the inner, you have very similar considerations to when attacking the outer, however these are made even more extreme in terms of how well defended the keep is. If the keep is heavily defended, you generally don't want to be attacking the main gate if you can avoid it, because it is very easy to defend the main gate from inside, where there can be multiple meat bags pointed at the doorway and other defensive traits used to stop you from getting into the doorway. Therefore, if you are attacking a heavily defended keep, you will generally want to attack one of the two postern doors, because these are easier to enter in both types of keep, whether it be this type which have got a wider inside area with the scroll off to the side, or the other type of keep which is much narrower. In both these cases it is easier to get in through the postern door than it is through the main gate. However, just like the outer, it takes longer to siege down a wall than it does a door, so you would need to consider which would be more effective. At this point I would like to make a quick point about efficient sieging. I see a lot of people, especially people that are fairly new to PvP, just using one ballista like this, firing it, and then just standing and waiting for it to reload, not doing anything before firing the next shot. If you want to siege effectively, you can fire one shot, abandon the siege, set up another one, fire the shot off this one, and then set a third one up. Obviously on the first rotation, once you've got the time of setting sieging up, the first siege will be waiting, but if you set 3 siege up in a triangle like this, by the time you set up the third, you can shoot one, whilst that's on cooldown move to the next one, shoot the next one, whilst that's on cooldown move to the third one, and by the time you fire the third shot, the first one will be reloaded and you can fire again. If you do this, you'll maximise your output in terms of siege damage and hit both walls and doors down quicker. When defending a keep, you have two key considerations to make. The first is whether the keep is under attack or not. If the keep is not under attack, i.e. any wall or door is not under 50%, then you can be a lot more aggressive with your defensive style because you can still respawn at the keep. For example, in this case you may want to push out of the keep and aggressively attack the enemy group outside the keep, Even if you are only disrupting their ability to siege, this can be highly effective, because if they can't get the keep under siege, they will not be able to stop you respawning, and in most cases eventually you would defeat them due to the fact that you could respawn and they couldn't. The other key consideration is the balance of numbers of defenders versus attackers. If the defenders are outnumbered by the attackers, you will need to play a lot more strategically and use what you have wisely, whereas if you are outnumbering the enemy, then you can play much more aggressively, and even if the keep is under siege, if you have not used your camp respawn, i.e. you have not respawned at a camp within the last 5 minutes and therefore do not have cooldown, you may be wanting to push aggressively to eliminate as many players and help any other defenders be able to push out successfully. In terms of defensive strategies, the first and most obvious strategy is just to form your group up just on top of a wall with the intent of pushing out. If for example you were defending the main gate, you may stack up here and you may all activate proxies at once and then push out and attack the people on the ram like this. By dropping out and all pushing out at the same time, you will be able to maximize damage in a small area, thus eliminating anyone in this area, and then once they were eliminated you would then push out and focus on any siege that were further out. The risk of this is that whilst you are close to the keep, i.e. in this sort of position, anyone sieging from further away can redirect their siege to aim at you instead of at the door or whichever wall they are sieging, thus meaning that you'll take heavy siege damage which you can wipe through quickly if you do not get out of the area quickly. Therefore it should only be used if you are not fighting a particularly skilled enemy group, because a skilled enemy group will quickly wipe you because of this. An alternative tactic that I sometimes see used is to try and ambush the enemy group whilst they push into the door or wall. This is highly effective if you have not given away the fact that you are there defending a keep and can catch people by surprise when they've not got defensive buffs up and other damage ready. The most effective way to do this is to come into this position either side of the main gate. Do not use any skills, because if you use any skills it will put red circles around your group and give away your position, and wait for the enemy group to start pushing in. When they start pushing in, once a decent number are in and therefore looking away, you can drop your group down onto this position, do large DPS in this group in this area here, and then push backwards into those that have already got in, thus eliminating a number of enemy players before they realise you're here. This tactic would only really work if your enemy group is not aware of your presence within the keep. If the enemy group is aware of your presence within the keep, especially if they're a skilled group, they will be on the lookout for these sort of ambushes, and if they detect your presence they could quickly run outside the keep again, regroup and push back in again, and therefore catch you out of position and therefore be able to eliminate you fairly easily. Another tactic which can be quite helpful if you are heavily outnumbered by the enemies, especially if the enemies are a relatively unskilled group, is to perform a coordinated counter siege, which is to set up lots of siege around the area where they are coming in. So for example, if they were coming in through the door, you would set up siege throughout this area, all aiming at the doorway. You would then, instead of firing sieges as soon as they are ready, you would wait and the group leader will call out to fire sieges all at the same time, all targeting the same area, thus meaning that there is massive damage in that area, and regardless of how many enemy players try and push through that area, they will all be eliminated due to that massive damage. This can be highly effective in eliminating players, especially if they are not suspecting it, but the risk is that there is an element of luck in this tactic, because if you siege at the wrong time, you will not get the damage when you are needed it, and the enemy group may be able to push in between shots and eliminate you quite quickly because you're all spread out around siege rather than being in a nice grouped area. An experienced raid leader will be able to see small hints and signs to understand when an enemy group is ready to push in. However, even the best raid leaders will get it wrong sometimes, and that is why there is a risk to it and an element of luck. When defending the inside of the keep, the biggest and most important factor to consider is that as a group you should never stay stationary. If your group stays stationary, for example trying to hold the top flag for too long, then it will be very easy for the enemy group to start swarming from all sides and push in all at once and eliminate you before you have time to move. If you keep moving and keep spreading the enemy group by pushing into small sections of the enemy group, you can more effectively stay alive, keep the heals, and not be overwhelmed by the attackers. Often you will try and use sieges to stem the initial push, for example setting up the meat bag here, there and there to all hit the doorway as the enemy groups come in. However, if you're facing a large enemy presence, you will likely need to abandon these sieges quite quickly because they will get overrun. This is not to say you shouldn't do it, but you should be aware of the fact that they will be overrun quickly and therefore be ready to react accordingly. However, on the note of defensive siege, it should be noted that oils can be set up here or here on this type of keep. They can also be set up pointing at the top flag around here, and oils can be highly effective at eliminating enemy groups, especially if they don't expect the oils to be there, as they can do a lot of damage quite quickly. It is worth noting for the other type of keep, this much more narrower type of keep, the position where you set up oils are different. In this case, you would set up oils in this position over the top flag. However, it is also worth noting that oils can also be set up on these small areas here. If you need to be careful with your positioning, as you can see there is a relatively small area that it will be accepted. However, if you set them up in that position, you can oil down and hit them if they try and group up on either the transistor shrine or in this case in the scroll position. It is the same for this position here. Again, a relatively small area can be used, but if you put siege up in this small area, you can oil the bottom flag from this position. However, this position is not as effective a place to siege because enemy groups will not as often group up underneath this area, as if they are on the bottom flag they will likely try and push straight up to the top flag and therefore come around and be able to kill you quite quickly whilst you are defenceless operating the oil. Please note one of my previous videos also covers the defense for keep in action, and further tips and hints can be captured throughout that video, but this video will hopefully have shown you the basics of defending, which can be applied in any fight, whereas that other video is specific to the fight that is focused on. So that's the basics covered. As I'm sure you can imagine, there's far more to it than that, and I will hopefully cover further points in future videos. However, I wanted to make sure that I cover the basics in this video, so if you're new or relatively new to PvP and need some more tips and hints on how to siege, you can use this video as reference. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.